It says starting now.
There, starting now. Welcome, everyone. This is our OpenEEW Town Hall meeting for, I think it's May 26th, if I remember the date.
It is correct.
So we had some really cool announcements yesterday, and I wanted to start off with those. We had the Clinton Action Committee make some announcements, so it was a big splash. We had some news articles. I think we want to talk about them. I know that our fearless leader, Andy, is on a panel discussion right now. I'm curious to what he's saying with I don't know if Mr. President Clinton is there still, but I caught his remarks yesterday. And he recorded and had practiced and did a really nice job in about 1 minute and 45 seconds talking about the OpenEEW project. But before we get too far into that, because I know that Daniel's probably got like way more details about the actual Clinton announcements, I see a couple of new members here, and I wanted to welcome folks to the project. If you want to just introduce yourself, we're happy to introduce ourselves too. Always open and welcome community here.
Hi, my name is Karthik. I was looking into the Slack channel about this project, and I was very interested in contributing to the project. So I was just checking in the Slack, and then I joined here.
Yeah, very cool. Welcome and really delighted that you're joining. What's your background? You're a developer, IoT, Edge, web.
So I was working as a Python developer since 8 years, and I've been in IBM for more than 3 years. And most of my work is into developing web applications, and now I am very much interested in doing some AI work, and I'm just contributing some of them. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're delighted you joined us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's it from my side.
All right. All right. So Daniel, do you want to? So thank you for joining. Do you want to kind of do a quick press article review of what was transpired in the back end yesterday?
Yes, I dropped a couple links in the chat. So number one, there is a Clinton Global Initiative Resiliency Conference going on right now. Actually, I think Andy's on it. So I'm on a panel. Maybe Andy's on it with me in an hour at 4 o'clock. You can stream it for free. You don't have to register or anything like that. So I'll put a link to that. So generally what the CGI initiatives, they do focus on the Caribbean, disaster preparedness, rebuilding, things like that. So this is, I think, their 6th meeting of it. They call it the Action Network. And the way the Action Network works is companies, startups, government entities, large enterprises, they work with the Clinton Initiative basically in a matchmaking capacity to lay out, this is going to be an innovative new solution for the region. We're asking for help. Please come on board and help us bring this initiative further. Here's where we are right now. This is where we want to go. So that's basically what happened yesterday. It's something called a commitment to action. It was made by Grio, which is Andy's startup and who originated the OpenEEW technology under the hood. They announced the contribution we had given to create the first batch of 90 sensors for Puerto Rico, as well as talk to our ongoing open source contributions to ensure that OpenEEW could be a successful open source project, continuing to grow week by week like it does. So that's part of it. And the other important part of it is that we have local stakeholders on the island of Puerto Rico, right? So we're not just creating technology and then airdropping it on them and saying good luck. It's really the success of this project, anywhere it's deployed, is really with local stakeholders, local scientists, local folks who have a stake in the project. And so the Puerto Rico Science Trust, the Resiliency and Businesses Initiative within that, and the Puerto Rico Seismic Network are part of this whole kind of commitment to deploy these 90 sensors, do a pilot with them, understand the data, and hopefully expand it out into something that really is something that can be used in Puerto Rico to save lives, as well as other parts of the world based on the same core technology. So yesterday, there was a press release as well talking a bit about this, which is exciting. There was the 2-minute snippet, which is in Andy's LinkedIn post there. I think we also have it on YouTube somewhere, John, if you have a direct link. And then we have perfect. And then there's a couple of media articles. I think they're slowly trickling out, but one of them was the Next Web, which I don't think I dropped in there. And then one was the Smarter Cities World. So they're kind of helping us generate some awareness of the project, and hopefully inviting some more communities to join us, more people join the community. So hopefully we do get some more folks coming in. So really excited about that. I'll put the link to the session that we're going to be doing in less than an hour if you want to join that after Town Hall. And I'll have to drop a little bit early to get ready for that one.
Yeah, go make shine up and get ready. All right, so a couple of things I wanted to I think the next big news was Ryan's work on the web's page, and I wanted to give him a couple of minutes because we knew that we wanted to put our best foot forward, and so we revamped the landing page for OpenEEW.com, but Ryan did the bulk of the heavy lifting for that. And so, Ryan, thanks for waking up early and getting that all done on Sunday.
No worries. I mean, and Kush, I got to give some credit to Kush here because he did basically half the entire site. And then there was a previous site that he worked on for a week that we ended up not really using all that much of because at the end we moved to use React instead of doing a Gatsby. Thank you. Yeah. And so Kush basically just had to rewrite the code for all the stuff that he had done in the previous week. So
no complaints. I'm glad you switched.
Yeah, it's funny how like once you go in a React world, it's just React just.
Why would you do anything else?
Yeah, no. Exactly. To make a static site. So yeah, thank you, Kush, for making your weekend about.
No, and definitely thanks for helping me along the way. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
I think it looks great. I know I pushed a couple of patches that never made them, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that is there's another version of it coming up next, where we have to update the. So there's two things that I want to update: the photos with whatever photos are the latest ones that we have in there, which have I think the white backgrounds on them, and then we should just put at the bottom some sort of connection to Griot, Call for Code, Linux Foundation. I'd like to put them as logos somewhere, but I don't know if on the previous site we had them as just a line in the footer. The fact that it's a Call for Code with Linux Foundation project, but I don't know. We can sort of talk about the design details of that. Take a vote on it. Do we want it just as a footer, or do we want it as like more prominent logos up higher?
Well, it all comes down. I know there's always trademark questions on whose logos we're allowed to use.
Yeah,
but it's good advertising too. So there's a pro and a con to it. Just getting the approvals. Yeah. Did the prior site have both logos on it?
Not .com, not OpenEEW.com. I know Griot.io had some partnership logos on there. I know they're on the sensors themselves that are being deployed. But yeah, it's funny because with the IBM, I know we have a particular usage document. I'm not sure it's always followed, but those are one of those things that we may just have to connect with each organization, get their agreement. We don't already have it to put on there. But in general, I like the idea of having logos. I tend to see those in the single page apps kind of about 3/4 of the way down, unless they're in some sort of hero carousel. But yeah, I think just at least calling out Linux Foundation as in the footer. I know that's one thing we want to restore back. We had an old site that we didn't. That had organization stuff, but I do think that makes sense to show. And if there are any interesting press article snippets that are interesting, those are always great. But those are incredibly hard to keep up to date. So we want to make sure we focus on really the top ones that I think are representative.
Yeah. So the footer. I can get the text in the footer as soon as possible, and and then update the photos, and then whatever we do with the logos down the road, if it's going to take a little while longer to get permission and whatnot, we can wait on that. But yeah, the footer is almost ready to go. We also, with the website, need to think about how it's showing up in Google, because there's a lot of different names we have at our disposal now. We have Grio, Call for Code, OpenEEW. IBM is usually just thrown out there as like the general, right? But it's like we need Google to start making the connections between those things and our OpenEEW website. So now I'm not sure. I'm not too much of a SEO guy, but I don't know. I think there's something we can submit to Google to basically tell it how the results should show up on the search results. But does anyone actually know a little bit more about that than myself?
IBM does have quite a few SEO experts. I don't happen to have that particular set of skills, but I could take a note if we want to get one of those teammates to just come help us make sure we've got our meta tags correct and search tags. Yeah,
that'll be helpful, because I know React React is better now than it used to be a few years ago, because I think Google has started checking the JavaScript of a site instead of just the static material, or instead of just the HTML. But yeah, it'd be interesting to know if someone, if we could get any advice from someone who does this routinely, how to best display those results. Because right now it just sort of shows up as one line. It doesn't have one of those like cool sort of sitemap things on on Google. But anyway, that's all the stuff that's on my radar for the static site.
Yeah. Oh, nice work there. I wanted to. So the next up was a little bit of a complaint. I thought one of the news articles that went out, maybe it was the first one that got posted from the TWN, the next web. They use a whole bunch of old links, and I'm not sure who. Maybe I need to go to Deirdre. No, I mean it's too late now, but I mean, I'm not sure what happened.
We did go back to them because we had one of them linked to GitHub. They were linking somewhere else, but there are some typos in there But Chris is the person that can make the outreach. I know, for example, he has David Clark with an E at the end of it.
Yeah, I saw that, like that David Clark cause/call for code, and that website's not nearly as up to date as callforcode.org.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, we should. I guess the long story short is we should get the messaging right, get that in the right Twitter cards that go behind the metadata, and make sure we've got the right info in there. Definitely.
All right, and then I wanted to talk about infrastructure for a minute, because we do so much work to be ready for the big announcement, and then there was an outage in IBM Cloud in I guess US East, and the clouded database instance has been down for quite a while. It's now going on 24 hours or more, maybe. I don't know if Adrian here. Adrian, have you been following this incident ticket?
No, not this specific one. I mean, I get spam bot tickets pretty much every day at this point.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that it's lasted this long, though. Usually, the tickets don't impact any of our infrastructure. So first time.
Yeah, this time App ID is down, so we can't log into the dashboard, and CloudInt is down, so we can't update or query any of the sensors. I put the ticket in the infrastructure channel.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's what we even do about that. Part of the reason we take these services is because they're supposed to deal with the high availability.
I know. But my hope is you let someone else manage it at scale and keep it reliable, and not such a good track record, maybe. And then the next one, over the weekend, I just wanted to talk to Václav, because he turned on like this. He was subscribing to the AWS feed for the Mexico sensors, and then publishing to the MQTT feed on Watson IoT. So I came in on Monday morning, which is like me coming in my office door right here, and I sit down and I'm like, okay, I think I saw an outage or something. I wanted to go look at something. Suddenly I saw 4 gig of data had passed through the MQTT broker. I'm like, where did this 4 gig come from? Because we had been really cautious about kind of staying in below the cap, and then we moved to a standard plan just to make sure that we were ready for the Caribbean network, and then we just blew it through the ceiling, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? Anyway, so it's like a couple of. Then I was worried about the cost because I had gone over the cap, but only by maybe 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes per month, and I'd never really seen any pricing for it. And so I saw the pricing; it was like $1 a day, which is nothing. So we could probably turn that on if we wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to turn it on right now, but I think we need to discuss the MQTT, like the way we go in the future.
Yeah,
So,
we were waiting to get beyond this announcement, and then we can start to really look at VernMQ. I didn't want to go making wholesale production changes right before the release.
Yeah, I think that we should that should be probably a thing to discuss as soon as possible. It's probably not right now in a town hall meeting, but I think that yeah, we need to discuss this and then like choose a final MQTT or pseudo final MQTT that we're gonna go with, because I think that right now we still don't have like end-to-end system that would be working, because yeah, we are still not really flowing the data through the algorithms, and we are not outputting to the DBs and stuff. And I think that like once we start deploying sensors, like more sensors than now, it's going to be more and more difficult to switch to a different broker. So yeah, we need to probably do some testing of the VernMQ and stuff like that, and then really decide for one broker and then stick with it. Yeah. Sorry, I sent through a lot of data for your MQTT, but
on a Saturday.
For those algorithms, I just need to run the data. Like that's gonna be like the real. I think that this is gonna be kind of a normal flow for the MQTT in the future when the Caribbean is in. Even if we don't send Mexico through, I think that's just gonna be quite normal, because some stations are gonna run like continuous data streams and not on trigger. So yeah, the MQTT needs to be ready for that. Probably not that much more, but yeah. Yeah,
Adrian and I don't know, Adrian, if you caught it, but there was an Eclipse Edge day was today. So earlier today, some IBMers talked about Project Amlin. They're going to be contributing the message broker, the scalable message broker, to the Eclipse Foundation, which is an option. They talk vaguely about the timeline over the next couple of weeks. Be curious to see how that plays out. But I was hopeful in terms of how they're going to provide a Docker file for it. So we have to look at that too.
Well, I think so. There's a timing kind of issue here, because it seems like Andy at least wants to make the decision sooner rather than later. So is that even really an option, the Project Armland? Because if they come out, 6 weeks from now, which is not a long time in my opinion, like that means they would be going fast. But is that still too slow for this project to move into it?
Yeah, I think that we really need to choose something like these days, because we still don't have the end-to-end product. And I know that we are aiming kind of for the 25th to have everything running in a version 1. And I mean, it's probably not absolutely crucial that we didn't have it, but we didn't have it really. And so, yeah, I think that we should really pull a trigger on some MQTT broker, at least for, I don't know, next half a year. And then if we really see that there's a better option out there, we can probably change. But yeah, I think that we should probably, get at least somehow finish up the version 1 and then with some semi-stable broker.
Well,
then kind of be in a standby mode,
here's if presented that way, I would say what we have today works, right? As soon as we know the devil we know works, the halfway ambulance is sort of I won't have to make a lot of changes to the firmware. The whole Vern MQ, I may need to go and make some substantial changes to the firmware. So that becomes a whole second level of trying to figure out how, we have to get inside of the docs for that and understand it better.
Yeah. Like I'm kind of running out of my IT knowledge on this issue, so I don't really know like all the details of brokers and stuff. But I don't know, like if you don't mind that there's going to be quite a bit of data usage or quite a bit of data going through your MQTT, and I don't know like what are the pros and cons of like running this whole system through your account. So
I was only worried about the cost.
Like the broker, like over the weekend, like I tested out the broker and and it works good, but it's probably going to be like about the amount of data that was flowing through that. Maybe a little bit less. I don't need to send all the Mexico through, but
1.4 gig a day
system and kind of have a working prototype of the system. We will have to send the data somehow, and still the Mexican data is the best network that we got out there, and the biggest chance that we'll get some real earthquakes out there, and
right.
that's essential for testing out the system.
There's also probably a greater issue here that we need to figure out is how we're going to scale this as we become a real, as this technology becomes usable and out there in the world, right? Because right now we've been basically trying to build this as individual components that we can get these sort of individual things to work. But now if we're talking about creating an entire global network that relies on these, very heavy data streams that are going to go into whatever cloud infrastructure that we end up using or whatever broker we end up using. I've got issues with the dashboard where we need to handle traffic to the dashboard. We need a subscription to Mapbox, right, which is probably $200 a month or so. These are costs that are not absurd for a organization like ourselves, but basically we need money. I mean, we're not going to be able to run this on, we're not going to be able to run what we want to do on the light versions or the free versions of everything. So it's probably, it's something that we need to think about, I think, over the next, over the next little while. I mean, obviously the technological, aspects of MQTT we need to figure out fairly quickly, but it's a broader question of like, as an organization here, how do we start paying for some of this stuff? Because I don't think we're going to do it if we don't have some sort of budget to be able to handle some of these costs.
Yep. Also, like alternatively, the way, and this is just an idea, I'm not saying that I haven't really thought about this too much, but I think that alternatively we can also just make a working prototype running on those quite light plans, like still like having something that works well and stuff, and then it would be working more like somewhat decentralized in those locations like Puerto Rico or wherever the network would be, and they would support their own infrastructure in the cloud and pay for that. So maybe we can like kind of pull the data at the end and pull just the results of it, which would probably which wouldn't require such a heavy data flows and stuff like that, and the infrastructure can be quite lightweight, and we would provide the technology to those people that would be running the regional networks somewhere, and they would be carrying that responsibility for supporting their own infrastructure in cloud.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion to be that we need to have for sure.
Yeah, the different business model you're proposing, I think, makes a lot of sense, because that's what a lot of people who would be in our position would do, right? You get like the on-prem where we would give you the Docker box or the Helm charts, and you deploy it on your own infrastructure. You choose your own infrastructure. or we charge you and we do it as a service. So we host the infrastructure and then you come and you pay us. And we're like choosing neither of those routes. Like we're doing we host it for you, everybody is in the for you, and then you don't pay us any money, which pretty much means that there's no revenue stream in at all for this. So that does put us in a hard position. But if we went down that path that you're suggesting with the two routes of like we have one that you pay us a service and then the other you deploy and here's all the automation tools to do the deployment on your own. I think we're decently positioned for that. And if we wanted to head in that direction, I think we could definitely do it because of the tools and the decisions we've made so far about using Kubernetes, Docker, et cetera, that all of that stuff could be automated through a mix of Terraform and Ansible. And then of course, we know that as a team here, we could set up our cloud infrastructure. We just would have to, charge people money for it, I guess. But that's like a discussion for you guys in the technical steering committee and Andy to make a decision like that. But I do think those are things decisions that you guys should make sooner rather than later, because I can see this blowing up really quickly, right? We have Puerto Rico is going to deploy stuff. I don't see why the Dominican Republic wouldn't want to do it. You have Nepal coming down the pipe, and that's just going to take us from like one sensor to hundreds of sensors potentially. So we got to deal with this quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, whatever model we decide, I mean, it's probably going to mean, I mean, if we're getting money involved and whatnot, it probably means organizing as a nonprofit or some way of being able to, financially facilitate some of this stuff. But it's that, I mean, yeah, basically we just need to choose. We probably have a separate meeting on it because we don't have to choose in this town hall, but we need to choose basically a business model for OpenEEW fairly quickly. And I think that's going to lead us to making technological decisions also, because are we how much of a central service are we offering? I would like to offer some of a central service, right? Because I think the dashboard, I don't think there's a lot of ways to do the dashboard without doing it that way. I don't think people are going to spin up their own version of the dashboard, but the dashboard is going to become an application that's going to incur a lot of costs, and we need to be able to figure out how to take care of those.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, honestly, I'm planning Nepal and I've never really thought about using OpenEEW technology without paying for it. I think it's natural that people who set up networks will also pay for, or could pay potentially for, the service that is being provided by OpenEEW, or they just host their own infrastructure somewhere else. So I think it's definitely reasonable to pick a model that also like pays for itself, like one or the other.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's certainly a discussion for the TSC. Hey, I don't know if Pedro's here. I see him on the tile. Because I know that we were trying to deploy a couple of sensors in Puerto Rico last week on a Friday afternoon. Pedro, I'm sorry I wasn't available to debug with you. Wanted to know if those sensors did make it to the dashboard or not.
Hey, John. So I was working with Ryan this on, I think on Monday, and basically the application itself did not send the Wi-Fi details to the sensor. So we got stuck there, but at the same time, we could see the sensor in Bayamon on the map. So I think, and then I was also having some trouble to log into the dashboard. I think that's the bug that's growing currently. Yeah, exactly. So I don't have any more news. I was just waiting until those issues were resolved. But yeah, I got kind of stuck.
Okay. So let's sort it out. I'm not sure when it's appropriate over the next week or so to make it over to Bayamon and talk to Luis. Try to get those sensors up and running.
Yeah, sounds good. He's on call. We can just send him the instructions if we have to, like, reflash it or disconnect and connect it. He can do that for us.
Okay.
So how quickly do you think that the sensor deployment is going to go? How many sensors do you think that you're going to deploy in the next week or 2 or 3?
So I'm not exactly sure what's the timeline, but I believe in the month of June, we should have at least 40 sensors installed. And then once we get the rest, I believe there's going to be 50 more coming soon. Probably July, we'll have a full-on network. That's what it looks like.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, really excited.
And Pedro, what the one that because I know I changed one sensor over to your account, but then you could, as I understood it, you could get control of it, but we couldn't update it. Was that the issue with it, or could you not even get control over it? Like, did you send a test to it and whatnot?
Yeah, so when I logged in and you assigned the sensor, it said it was in the firmware 1.0. And that was really curious because I thought we had updated it.
Yeah.
No. So that means that sensor, the 1.0 sensor, was the original Raspberry Pi.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, I think we have to follow up with that because it did give me the option to upgrade the sensor, but it wasn't working when I pressed the button.
So Ryan, you assigned, which is probably okay, the Raspberry Pi based original one. Remember, we sent a few to Pedro back probably last fall.
Yeah, but there's only 3 in Puerto Rico right now, and one of them's in I forget the location specifically. Yeah, that's one. So I saw one in there, and that one hasn't checked in for a little while.
Yeah, that one's disconnected. I want to confirm that. The one that's in the southern part of the island, it shouldn't be there.
Okay, so actually, let me get in I think the dashboard is working now because the whatever was down, I think, came back up. So here, let me just share my screen real fast, and because I'd like to know.
Still looks dead to me.
Okay, so the one that I changed over was this one here.
Yes, that's the one in Engine 4 and by demo.
Okay, and then and that one does list, we still need a part of this dashboard where we can see which one this actually is in the chart without it linking to you. But that says that it's 1.0. But this one, is that a different one that you're associated with, or is that?
Yeah,
okay.
So that's the first sensor that the Science Trust installed. It's in their building. So they have 40 sensors at their offices, and they labeled them. So the first one on the right, the green one, is Grillo 001, and the one on the left is 002. So I'm not sure is like why is the old firmware appearing there? It looks like the new one is the first one is looking fine.
And then you said
I think you
take this out, right?
Remember, you have two sensors. You have a sensor, two sensors that are Raspberry Pi, and one or more sensors that are ESP32. Okay. I don't think Luis ever got his connected.
So yeah, all I did, maybe we just connected the wrong sensor, but all I did was just move a sensor that was already in the database to Pedro's account. So I think the issue, if it is a Raspberry Pi, is maybe that just an incorrect sensor got into the database.
That makes a lot of sense.
We loaded them all. I loaded Mexico and Pedro's as well.
I think I know what's going on. I think that's the old sensor because when I went there on Friday, the original one was installed, the one from last year. So I think that's just the old sensor, and the new one hasn't been connected yet. That must be it.
Right. All right.
Okay,
let's
cool.
go with Lewis and we'll get his connected, and I think will be a happier place.
Definitely. But just to confirm, the one in Ponce can be removed.
Okay. Yes. So we can get rid of that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Pedro, I don't know if you are familiar or if you are aware, but is the agreement that all the sensors from Puerto Rico are going to send the continuous data streams, or is some of the sensors are going to be on trigger?
I have no idea. Dan or John, do you know?
Yeah, so I was really hopeful we were going to do on trigger. That's the whole point of edge processing. I know that.
Sorry.
but I know that Andy had worked something out with the Science Trust to do some of the sensors in continuous mode, and I don't know if some means all of them or a subset of them.
Yeah, because
it's important to know that for scaling. Like so 90 sensors in continuous mode. It's probably 5 gigabytes a day.
I think it's about over 200 gigs per month. Yeah, like 250 back of the envelope calculation. So yeah, it's just another reminder that we really need to deal with the MQTT as soon as possible.
Right.
Because that's going to be 100 gigs till the end of June, and then every other month is going to be 200 gigs or 250 gigs of data.
Not my first choice. But the cool thing is the firmware, you can modify it, right? So dynamically, we could say continuous mode or on trigger. So that part of the firmware doesn't have to change. We just have to decide how to process the data and if we're storing the data. Right.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to kind of discuss was that I still think that we are we still haven't reached the version 1 and like what is there left to do. So just like put ourselves some target to shoot for in the next few weeks. So I don't really know like what all the components are that need to be finished till version 1. But I think that MQTT, like we need to decide on that probably more like on the level of technical steering committee. But then I don't know, like what do you guys think from your own components? What is there left to do? It doesn't need to be much. I think like polishing and kind of joining the components together and creating that first working end-to-end prototype. I think that we probably called this version 1 before. So we probably just need to define like what is the road that leads us to there and when approximately we want to finish it up. Because I don't think that we are too far away. I don't know, Ryan, if you think that some event display on the dashboard should be part of it, or we can just push it to version like 2, or I don't know what the naming convention will be of those versions. Like it doesn't need to be anything, I'm just asking like what we call version 1 and how we think that we're gonna get there.
So for the dashboard, the events, I mean, are definitely. I mean, I already have a version of the events basically, working. It's just that it's full of bugs and some of the parts of the events page that need to be rewritten a little bit because now it's connecting to the database and there's some assumptions that I think we made early on that need to be changed around. So it's I was a little disappointed not to have it for yesterday because I thought it was going to be a little more straightforward than it actually was. But it really is not something we're far off of. It's still a decent amount of it is still built. Now I do, as far as my abilities to work on the next few days, I'm going to try to get to it. But there's some other projects that I put on the back burner last week that I need to do now. So, but that's still probably within. Those events are probably going to show up there in the next few days. I would be hesitant to call it a 1.0 version if we didn't have the onboarding stuff completely taken care of for the dashboard and that sort of process. So there's a little bit of a refactor I think that needs to be done on how accounts are onboarded. Basically, I mean, to be blunt, we just can't have it where if people, we can't have people getting lost in this onboarding process and then not being able to then finalize their account. So that's a dashboard problem and how that connects to the provisioning app problem. The dashboard could be revised to have to sort of be a lot more logical in how it allows you to create a new password or whatnot. So I think there is a lot of work that I could do with the dashboard to make that happen. But that's the second big component that I would want in there before we. Now, The thing that we did initially consider a 1.0, but I think we can push to a future one, is like the access page on the dashboard, right? Like giving network managers abilities to do things that normal people can. Like we can call that next version. But the two big things for the dashboard to get it to 1.0 for me are the events page and the onboarding process that just works. I don't want people like thinking about the onboarding process. I just want it to be, you know, an Apple product from 2004. Like.
Yeah, I think that sounds very good. Yeah, from my perspective, I would like to deploy the seismology, or like make it running and make it really working from the data to the database, and then it shouldn't be too far away either. Like I was trying to do that. I was still getting some errors, but now I probably will wait for the final decision on MQTT so I can interconnect all those microservices together. But then it should be just fine. Yeah, we'll see like what our MQTT capacity is, and depending on that, I will either redirect or not the Mexican network through there. So yeah, that from my perspective is also just it kind of depends on our decision on MQTT. But after that, I'm just a few days away from, I think, version 1 from my perspective. So. And also, I need to do some work on that, on documentation of those algorithms, because right now the README is like 3 months old and the algorithm's completely different by now. So I need to change that too.
So to your comment about the MQTT, I guess switching from one to another one, I mean, we could probably work on trying to make that easier, because I mean everything that you're doing as far as this Python scripts, you know, over like there's like 5 microservices, they're using similar scripts to connect to MQTT, but maybe we can make it easier secret wise, like have one secret that's the master secret with MQTT stuff, so that, you know, all you have to do is change the variables there and then everyone picks it up, essentially something like that. That makes it easier, because it should be easy, because you're, like I said, you're using the same receive scripts across the board, and I am too on the Twitter app, actually. So I guess that could probably even be useful to the dashboard, where we only need to change this once. I think right now the way we have it set up, unfortunately, for every microservice we have to make wholesale changes when we switch MQTTs.
Yeah, it should be relatively smooth too. But I also had to refresh the devices that I got from the RenMQ and to that Watson IoT and stuff like that. But definitely I agree that if there is a way to make it easier, at least for those microservices, yeah, we should do that. So yeah, to make it as seamless as possible.
Yeah, so I don't have anything in my queue right now. There's no new features I want to add to the firmware, except for being able to dynamically change the. So the way I had built the firmware is you could dynamically change the Watson IoT broker between just tell us which org. And what I think we're all asking for is being able to dynamically change to any MQTT broker, still keep the device orchestration part so that we can centrally control, tell the sensors what to do and where to send their data. But then, so maybe my only new feature that I would probably look at is, you know, changing out the MQTT broker entirety. But there's all sorts of security stuff, which, you know, it's one thing to know what the endpoint is. It's the other thing is to actually get the certs correct. And the security of the device is what I do have to worry about. And that sometimes is not always straightforward. I don't really like the SPIFs data partition, because I feel so constricted by, like, if I make a change and a certificate changes, then I brick a device. I might just throw away SPIFs and hard code everything inside of the firmware, so I never have to go outside of the firmware. I could always push a version of a firmware that I know is going to work. but that means I need to push all the different possible certificates for all of the different MQTT brokers that we might want to use. It's a harder problem because we don't want to be out in the field flashing devices. I think that's the point, right?
Yeah, I think that's the point, that this change would enable Puerto Rico to flash the devices in the lab rather than when they are deployed, and then reflashing the devices with different MQTT potentially, if we decide not to go with Watson. Because right now those instruments are still in the lab and they could probably reflash them quite easily.
Well, I think what I'll have to do is we'll always be able to deploy them, and then if I only put all of the credentials, however we want to secure Vern, I will never write the certificates to SPIFs. I'll only do it in memory, and that way we could push new firmware to the device, but it's a one-way. It becomes a one-way activity. Maybe. I mean, you can send them back to Watson IoT because we'll have the certificate maybe on the. It's the matrix of possible certificate issues would get ugly.
Yeah.
We just have to be thoughtful about. We can't just like flip flop. We got to like decide and then map out a very clear path.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that.
I mean, the decision you guys make on the business model is actually going to impact us very greatly too. But I got a question for you, John. If we like took mqtt.openeew.com and then made that kind of the host name for all MQTTs right now, and then just use a proxy to reroute to anything that we change on the back end, would that solve problems? What I mean is, like, let's say we have mqtt.com pointing to MQTT mosquito. Under the hood, if we change from mosquito to VernMQ, the host name will be the same, but the pod that it points to will be different.
Yeah. So the trouble with just, yes, in theory, but what happens is you lose all of the shared subscription scalable architectures when you try to funnel everything through a proxy. Right? Because someday we might have a Nepal MQTT broker and a Caribbean MQTT broker. Probably not for. We'd have to think through how we want to make it scalable.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely options for it, but it's like I said, it's the decision on the business model definitely heavily impacts this, because if we control everything and then we split it by region, there's ways for a load balancer, for example, to take your IP and where it says you live and route traffic automatically to a specific pod and things like that. But that's kind of like really advanced network trafficking stuff. But we shouldn't even look into that until the decision on the business model is made. But anyways, I was just curious.
Okay.
To see if that
all right. What any other topics? Obviously Puerto Rico is important. The devices. I tell you, my new device so much more stable. My old device, I was like lucky to get like a couple hours out of it before it would just die because there's some weird hardware. It was one of the early prototypes that we produced last year, and it would just get a brownout for random reasons. So my new device is quite a bit more stable.
Do you know the reasons why it went to the brownout?
Oh yeah, I mean, when I first got it, I had to scratch off like excess solder between capacitors right near the USB cable, and it worked for a while, and then it's like a month ago it was getting really bad. It would brown out every 5 minutes or so, which I thought it was like me, and I was all during while Neil was I was working with Neil on switching between Wi-Fi and Ethernet, and I was doing a lot of different network scenarios, and I thought I was hitting voltage and current pull problems, and it had none of that. I mean, I did a ton of power management work in the firmware for nothing, because it was really the broken device components.
I mean, I would say in my experience with involving hardware, I mean, on the testing side, you've got to have the latest hardware, of what you expect to go into the field.
Yeah.
So that's what you've
much
got.
better.
I mean,
I'm much happier now that I have mine.
You've got to do that. You've got to get rid of the old hardware, because you've got to have a target of what the hardware is that you're testing that's going in, and having development, having yourself sort of working with old hardware. I mean, it's just a problem that I've been with in companies where we've evolved the hardware quite quickly, and it's just been a challenge, because you've got to have that hardware for testing. So I think you did the right thing.
Yeah. So Adrian's got a new hardware. I've got a new hardware. We sent one to Diego. Now you still have some. I don't remember what production run you have. So yours, we may have to refresh yours too.
Yeah, I mean, I have 20 sensors from the first batch, from those 100. So I haven't tested all of them. I've tested like 4 of them so far, and only for a few hours at a time. So I haven't really, I haven't really put it through a rough test yet.
Well, do you know what the version was that I got? Didn't I get the latest version?
Depending when we shipped them to you. When did we ship them to you? Back in January?
No, it was about 4 weeks ago, I think. 4 or 5 weeks ago, right at the beginning, because I guess about April 12th or beginning of April.
April. And then I don't know. I know that there was a production run in December, and then there was another production run in China.
Well, anyway,
2 production runs in China.
Maybe this is just a time to report on what's happened with the 2 sensors I've been running on there.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think it's pretty good news. I've had them running for 12 days, 2 of them side by side on the same sort of board, because I've been there with hardware before on this sort of thing. So, and they've been pretty stable. So for 12 days, they were just running on Wi-Fi on 1.5.1, that upgrade. One of the systems had 2 Guru meditation events, but recovered. So autonomously, they just rebooted. But the good news is they recovered. So, I mean, it's a separate sort of thing there. One time they were actually out for 2 hours. The connection to the MQTT was out for 2 hours. Now, I'm also looking at it. My network, is my network gone for that period of time? I don't know, but I've got some data.
There was definitely an outage, because mine went off as well. There was an outage, but then they recovered. At least mine recovered.
It was out for 2 hours at the morning of the 20th. So in Pacific Standard Time, they were out from midnight till just before midnight to whatever. So I mean, that does bring up, in terms of features that I think there is, what is the goodness of a connection? If somebody puts a device somewhere, but it's just on the edge of the Wi-Fi, and there really isn't much of a Wi-Fi connection there, I mean, that device is it's not very useful if it hasn't got a good connection. So it's just somewhere in that that view of that device, there should be, has this a 99% uptime, which is really the connection time more than anything else. Anyway, I'll just throw that out there.
So that's interesting. We could talk about whether, because when I do a Wi-Fi scan, I know the signal strength.
But that can change over time. Things can go up and go down. And I mean, you don't want to just reboot. You want to, I mean, in the telecom side of things, they used to do a 15-minute bin, which was basically how good is that connection and it's 15-minute bin. It's a difficult thing, but basically, do we want to, I would throw it out there, do you want to have some sort of ongoing goodness running thing of what that connection's like? Because maybe it's based on Wi-Fi strength, but fundamentally it's based on, do those MQTT connections make it?
Right. Okay, I have to think through if there's any quality of service I can do from the board to the cloud, or maybe we do it in the cloud.
Well, it's almost got to be a little bit both, but I think I would just phrase it's easier on the board to say, hey, I'm getting this connection coming through. I'm not getting the connection coming through. And on the cloud, it's like, well, if something hasn't reported in on a check-in, it's got to be low cost on the cloud is what I'm thinking, and more of the processing on the edge. So if the cloud says, hey, I haven't had a check-in for an hour, it means that something's bad has happened. Whereas it's got to be the device that reports, I've actually got a good connection 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll have to think about it more. I in all my power management problems, I built in all of these, like try to recover. And maybe I need to. So I've got little bits of code everywhere. It's just in a loop trying to recover. Maybe I aggregate those little, hey, I'm stuck. Let me, there's a few examples where if I have neither Wi-Fi nor Ethernet, I loop. If I can't get the time, I loop. If there's all these little snips of code that let me try to, sort of sleep, try again, sleep for a while, try again, sleep for a while. Maybe I should try to bring those together and then say, you know what, the board's really stuck. Let me do a power restart to see if I can just recover that way. I have to look. There's like 4 places where I have like code recovery that I might be able to start to do alerts. Hey, I'm dead. I'm dead. And maybe that's a color. Maybe I should be blinking a color. Hey, I'm not connected. I need help. Call a lifeline.
Yeah, that's the simple thing. But I mean, in a way, should also be on the dashboard as well, because it's the dashboard that might drive somebody to go and have a look at it. I'm guessing. But yeah, it's a hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's sort of like, everyone hates it when their smoke detector beeps because the battery's, kind of dying. But maybe I need to do that, right? Maybe I need to have some type of my battery is dead type of thing because I can't get to the cloud and come help me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should. I don't know. It's a judgment call. I think it should be probably driven from the cloud because you don't know where these devices might be. And, you don't want them, I think, some sort of color indication just to say, hey, I'm off. I'm not connected. And then if anybody's polling it locally, but the smoke sensors are a problem. I mean, I've heard the people who've made them, specified them, the regulators have said it's a problem. So we aren't at all in that category of fire danger or, immediate danger to the structure and stuff. But I think the goodness of the connection from the cloud side, hey, we're not getting this connector for whatever reason, therefore there could be a maintenance visit. Just so that it's not a living, it doesn't look like it's a working device. It's silently failed.
Right.
But anyway, that's the good news for me, is that for 12 days they've run, and I think they did 2 events that they detected something, and that was probably me jumping up and down on my concrete slab because I'm actually working quite close to it. And I don't know. I haven't investigated that yet. I'm going to switch them at some point, maybe to the Ethernet. Right now, it's just purely the Wi-Fi, and that was just because I haven't had the time to follow through what might happen if I connected them to the Ethernet.
Yeah. I think the Wi-Fi both are pretty solid now. Both, I tested the hell out of those 2 use cases next. Plug, unplug, hot plug, now plug.
And that's all on 5.1.51?
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. Okay.
The only thing I was thinking of when I heard this, like an alarm for when the thing is off, when it's not connected, is are people not going to confuse the I'm not connected alert with the actual alert? 1 and 2, what if the connection is currently just bad and fluctuates with on and off? Like, we don't want it to like say, "Hey, I'm connected, disconnected. Oh, it's fine. I'm connected. Oh no, it's not fine. I'm disconnected." Like, and repeat for like 5 hours on end. That's the situation I was thinking of. Like, what if it just fluctuates for a little bit? We don't want it to like yell for like 5 hours long, you know?
Yeah, so you have to think it through. So I've got a couple of devices that when you power them on, they kind of blink green if it's good. They blink orange if there's a trouble. I'll have to think through. Maybe I could do some visual cue.
So is the sensor supposed to be like my sensors normally blink bright blue even when they are not triggered? So that's
So when you they're supposed to just breathe like a slow cyan color.
Yeah. Maybe that can be. I don't know. Like maybe we can also pull more information from other users. But for me, it's kind of like bright because I had two. Sometimes 3 sensors side by side, and I need to turn them off for the night because I can't sleep. It's quite bright when you have them like on the table right next to the bed.
I have so I didn't push it, Václav, but in 152 I brought the brightness way down. That was my last power before I gave up on my old board because it was just browning out every couple of minutes. I brought the brightness down to like a tenth of the brightness, so it was like very dim. So I can give you that version.
Yeah, it's all right for me. Like I can just turn them off. But I think that maybe like that brightness would be appropriate for a normal, like when everything is working fine. I would say that we can.
The firmware 151 was like 50% brightness. But I agree, it was too bright. I could bring it down even more.
We can just discuss this later.
We even supposed to have them kind of close to us because I covered mine with a pair of sweatpants because it was blinking in a dark room. But like I was like, all right. I mean, I probably shouldn't have it in the room that I'm in. Maybe it should be in the basement or something. But I don't know.
All right. So if there's consensus, well, let's talk about it. If there's consensus it's too bright, I can bring that was 50% brightness. I could bring it down to. I think my final version was like a tenth. I think it was.
I'm curious. Is that the only light that's in there? Like, I guess. I mean, I don't care if it'd be a light, but like, could there be a smaller light on the side or something? I don't know if that's even part of the IoT.
There's 3 of those. I don't know if Hardik or Kush has seen it, but there's 3 LEDs here. And the 3 LEDs, they're like crazy bright. I have one of my prototype ones. I too like put in a box and underneath the desk here, because it's too bright. And I had all these crazy ideas, like we could change the colors of each LED. I don't know. I'm not. If someone wants to propose like a whole color scheme, I'd be happy to implement a color scheme. I'm not creative enough to come up with like which color should be which thing.
I think we can discuss this further at some future meetings. Like, and talk about the colors and stuff. Like from my perspective, it might not be when it's running and on. Like I would like maybe even not like. Turn on any light and just turn on the light when it's like if it's on trigger mode, just when it triggers or something like this.
Well, you have to have a light that says that it's like on, so you could just glance at it. I think it's. I think what is it? The fire alarm I think does that, doesn't there? Like this little red light that you know that it's on.
Or it can be like once at 10 seconds there can be like a little blink or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in this. But.
All right, let's talk about it because I'd be happy to make any change that people think is worthy. All right, cool. Let's turn off the recording and wrap up. Should we wrap up? Any other topics?
I tried updating the website just now with the footer, but I forgot to sign off on a PR that was
for some reason. Maybe I got to get with Adrian in the background. My it looks like CloudInt is back up, but my Node-RED flow is not recovering. But I need to go really investigate.
Okay, I'm stopping recording now. So
yeah.